Okay, hey, hello everybody. It is Monday, May 13th, 2019, and we are in our second week of experimenting with checking in on Slack, and I'm very interested to hear what everybody thinks of that experience, especially if anybody's totally not excited for it. But it looks like for the people who are using it, seems to be working well. I love being able to get a little bit of temperature check on how everybody's doing before we get into this video call, so that's nice and we get to warm things up a little bit. So what we're going to do, since we've got that going, is we're going to do our rounds of introductions, but we're going to kind of keep our check-ins super brief. So your name, where you are, maybe a sentence or two of what's where your head's at today, and then we'll dive into discussing some of the stuff that went into those introductions. If you've not yet put in an update or an introduction, you can go ahead and do that now. It's newworkcities.slack.com. If you don't have an invite, if you don't have an account for that, you can ask me for one and I'll send you a link. It's also, there should be a link to create an invite for yourself in your inbox from our Google group. I'd also like to give you guys an update on some of the stuff I've been thinking about as far as next steps for this group, and would like to get your thoughts on that. So I think I'd like to start with us kind of doing our intros and our Q&As, and then I'll make sure we make some time at the end to talk about where we're going as a group. And that's the deal. I see we got a couple of, one or two new folks in here, which is exciting. Okay, cool. So we're going to start with the people on video, and we're going to start with the people in the order that I see them on my screen. And I'm always curious how my screen matches up with yours, but I see Jaudia and then me and then Jessica. So that's how I'm going to do it. So Jaudia, why don't you go first, and then we'll go to Jessica.
Okay, that is not how my screen looks, so there you go. It's different. But I'm Jaudia. I realize that I always forget to say where I'm from. So I am Director of Operations at Launch House, which is a brand of co-working spaces in Northeast Ohio, so the Cleveland area. And I, for one, have been loving the Slack updates because I feel like we can get more in depth and comment on each other's real time, which is really fun. But I am interested in to and if my screen is freezing, I apologize, but the seasonality of events, we got into a little bit last week, and Tony, your comment on mine was about that. So I'd be interested to know how you guys are doing your events seasonally this year.
Thank you, Jaudia. Sorry about the muting. Yes, I definitely want to make sure we touch on that topic, even if just very briefly, but I think we can be very helpful to you pretty quickly. All right, Jessica and then Tamara. Jessica, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm Jessica Erickson in the suburbs of Chicago at Dayhouse Co-working with my colleague Jen, who is right below me in the Brady Bunch Square. Things are good. I did post in Slack. It's my first time posting in Slack. So, woo. Yeah. We hosted our first Biz Toolkit speaker series event. We brought in an HR specialist. It was great information, but we just had 2 people show. So just trying to find the right balance of events to work. So maybe going to schedule out the whole summer. Maybe it's announcing everything in advance, just trying to figure out what is the right balance of reminding and how to remind people and whatnot. So,
gotcha. Okay, this is useful, very useful to know about, since it lines with Jaudia and kind of where I'm thinking of taking things with the group. So, yeah, let's solve that 2 people show up problem. Okay, Tamara, how's it going there? And then we'll go back to Chicago metro area with Jen.
It's going well. Pardon me, I'm a little exhausted. I had a very, very busy week last week. We held 3 events, I think, right? 3 events, one outside of the space, 2 here. Just was a very busy week, and got some more exposure, so it was good.
I lost you there for a sec. You said you got some more exposure?
Yeah, so we held a small business resource showcase where we had vendor tables and of specific businesses. So we brought in some people that hadn't been in the space before, so that was really good.
Nice. Very good. All right. Cool. Very good. We're breezing through. Jen and then Serena. Jen, how's it going?
Hey there. Good. So last week I did something that I have been wanting to do for months, which is reach out to my personal network and say, hey, I did a thing. I opened a business. Check it out. So it was just a short and sweet email announcing the space, saying, hey, if you know anyone in the area who's looking for a place to work, we'd love the referral. Oh, by the way, we're taking on investors. And that got some nibbles, and yeah, gonna shake those trees this week.
Great. Yeah, and I want to underscore the importance of just reaching out to your personal network. People really don't pay attention. Everyone's busy with their lives, so sometimes you really have to hit people over the head with something important that you need them to know about, and then they will help you. All right, Serena and then Jennifer. Serena, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm normally in our New Orleans office of Launchpad, but this week I'm in Memphis, where we are in the middle of hiring some new people. So I'm covering the space in the interim, which has been a very interesting experience, since normally I'm not in the community manager role. So I've dealt more with a lot of the day-to-day and event planning and operations. And generally it's going well. We're just, working on our hiring process.
All right. Fair enough. I'm excited to hear how that goes and more of the things you learn as you dig into that experience there. Jennifer, and then let's see, Jennifer, and then we'll go to Mark.
Good morning, Jennifer from Workspace Suites here in Northwest Houston. We're thriving, we're getting our name out there. We've got more people coming in and looking at our space, and Alba and Herman are looking for somebody to actually do social media posts because they feel like they need something better than just a couple of quotes.
All right, cool. How are you looking for that social media person?
I honestly don't know. They just told me this morning in a brief text message.
All right,
fair enough. I'm not too sure what's going on.
All right, fair enough. Okay, let's go to Mark and then to Kyle. Nope, still got you on mute, Mark.
You hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah, so we are definitely in the trying to get people through the space. Everybody that loves the space and wants to use the space has no money. They're all not-for-profits or gallery, and so we're really trying to make a line of you can use the space, but if you're going to be wanting our time specifically, there's going to have to be some sort of remuneration for that. And then I've recently come from Vancouver, and I'm now on Vancouver Island, which is a much smaller community. And I think I'm still trying to market to people as if I was in a big city. So I've called in some people just to hey, what do you think about this? And they say basically our marketing and logo come across like we're expensive. So we're now in the process of dumbing down or getting plain or somehow changing our marketing so we don't come across as expensive. I'm almost debating not using the co-work term because I don't know if people in this community get this. There's a few office space locations in town and they do very well. And none of them use the word co-working. And then we did have a co-working place in town that went out of business. So I'm really trying to figure out how the best way to reach the audience in this smaller community. Sorry, that's a bit long-winded.
Yeah,
what's your web address?
Well, we've just got a placeholder at the morning right now. I'll put it on the chat. It's fourcornercv.ca, but I'll post our Google business site.
I'd just be curious to see what it looks like, to give you some feedback on that.
Yeah, we're using Gathering Space, and we had some people say, because I really like Gathering Space, I love the connotation of that, and then people said that comes across as pretentious. So again, we're in a smaller community. The community here is about 80,000 people. So you can imagine with the community, 8,000 people, you have a bit more of a, one side of the tracks and the other side of the tracks. And, some people are like, why would I pay for a desk? That's when I have my home. That doesn't make any sense. So using Gathering Space kind of goes above their head. And yeah, then they said, oh, you sound expensive. Look at that logo. That's for sure expensive. So,
all right. I think we got to reframe the perspective on that, Mark. I got some ideas on that.
Yeah, I know we're doing our 101 later this week, so yeah, plenty of time to go into that.
Fair enough. All right, we got Penny as well. Penny, how are things on your end? What's going on with your new space?
Good. I'm having 2 events this weekend, the same kind I've had before. I'm doing it about every 3 weeks. So Friday and Saturday, I'm inviting people to come to Radius Co-work anyway, it's nice to have it there, and then we can get a tour by Sean, who does a great job. But it's really inviting people in, trying to create community ahead of time to see who's interested and to see, what they think and to kind of brainstorm together. So the last ones have been successful. I want to continue doing this every 3 weeks until we launch, I guess, just kind of keep creating the community, because at some point I'm going to need people to sign on the dotted line with me. Well, I'll be signing on the dotted line, but I want to have a certain number of people committed before I sign.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Great. Well, it sounds like your things are moving and grooving, which is exciting. So I'm glad to hear it. Okay, we've also got a new member, Denny, who is in Jakarta, and he's got his microphone and video off, so he might just be listening in. But Denny, if you are listening in and you want to say hello, you're welcome to unmute your mics now and say hi. Otherwise, I will introduce you to the group and just say Denny's a cool guy who he and his brother have a 4-story building in a town in Jakarta, and they're working on getting it going. It's a really cool little, I got to look around the map of the neighborhood. It seems like a really fun place to visit. And I just think it's amazing that how global of a community we have here. So there you go. All right, cool. So welcome to Denny. Welcome to everybody here. We've got, I would say, at least 3 topics that came up that I want to at least touch on. And then I want to also talk about how this speaks to where we can go as a group. Would love to get your thoughts on that. And so what I want to do is I want to start with a couple things that I think we could try to do fairly efficiently and quickly, and then dive into the longer conversation around seasonal programming and some of the communication around how that can work. If anything else comes up that you want to dive into further, or a new topic comes up that you want to discuss during this call, we've got plenty of time. So just drop it into the chat. And if there's anything that you mentioned in Slack that you want to talk about that you feel like we just that we didn't touch on yet, just let me know. So what I want to do is just touch on the issue Mark is having around explaining what it is that his business does and what it has to offer, and relate that to something Jen has been doing with communicating individually with people, mass communicating, but with a lot of individuals. And then that's kind of like a smush of a topic, and then we'll get into the seasonal programming and Newark City's stuff. Sound good? Okay. All right, cool. So, Mark, the problem we're having is that people are looking at the website and they're giving you feedback, and everyone has their own perspective, and people don't really get what this co-working thing even is really about. And this is actually a common thread and a common problem that we're having in movement in general, is that even when I tell a party of strangers, what I do, when somebody asks me, like, what's your deal? What do you do? And I say, well, I'm helping a bunch of people build co-working spaces. In my head, I've found myself having to actually catch myself and qualify that and say, like, well, but not like office rental places, like really awesome places where they're like building great communities and doing special stuff. And I think that speaks to the larger kind of identity crisis that co-working is having, that we need to figure out how to communicate what it is that we are in a way that doesn't let people draw their own conclusions that we're just office space renters or we're a fancy incubator or like whatever they think it is. And the best way that I've found to communicate that, and I'd love to hear if other people have different perspectives on this, but the best way that I've found to do it is to show it as opposed to telling it. And to not, especially when you're in a town where there, you know, if you got 8,000 people that don't really have co-working or know what it is, that's like phase one of about 3 phases that a city can go through. So in that phase one, people don't get it yet. The only people that get it are the people who are ready. And that could only be like a single digit number of people who are hungry for it. Maybe they were thinking of starting their own space. You know, they're just ready to jump in because they're at the very, very tip of the bell curve. And so we could talk about that. And then there's kind of this next phase where the bell curve people have come in and you've created some awareness, and then you could start to reach kind of that next group of people where you can talk about what it is in a more specific way. And then there's the next phase where there's a bunch of co-working spaces. Everybody knows what it is. And then you have to explain to people why your space is different and better. And so that's like kind of phase 3 is like, wow, it's so established that now people have their own opinions about what it is. You have to work with people's existing expectations. But at this phase in your particular situation, we're dealing with, we can't assume that they know what it is or that they even get it. And so this initial outreach that you're doing, what you want to not do is spend time trying to explain it to people who are just not there yet. And most of the people that you're going to deal with in your town are just not there yet. And they're not going to be there yet until after you have demonstrated what this is with those early adopter folks. So right now, anything that you put out there, most people aren't going to get, but we just want to get that handful of trickle of people who are totally excited and ready. That's all we can really count on for right now. For everybody else, and kind of to widen that little like tip of the iceberg, we want to start giving them other things to do that they do understand. And so we've talked in other calls about just the utter simplicity of a gathering, of something that involves giving them carbs and a chance to hang out and talk to each other and some kind of value. So in like the talk that I did at Juicy in Denver, I talked about doing like a muffin meditation Monday, and I just made that up. You can make up whatever you want. But if you find like the best local baker in town and you get everybody together for a thing and you're going to like set your goals for the week, and you know that you do that as a very simple invitation, people understand, hey, come over to this cafe. I'm going to buy everybody muffins and we're going to talk about our businesses, right? Like something really, really simple like that. That doesn't need explanation because everybody understands that muffins are delicious, right? So you start with this thing that requires no explanation, and then people come in and they're like, okay, I came here for muffins, but it sounds like you're working on something else too. So, you know, and you're like, yeah, okay, well, let's just sit around the table. We're all going to introduce ourselves. We're all going to get to know each other. Hey, I'm Mark. Hey, I'm Jane. I'm a photographer. Hey, I'm Bill. I'm a website developer, right? And then everybody gets to know each other. Then they start to realize that, hey, the photographer can help the web developer and the web developer can help the lawyer and whatever, right? They start to become friends. They all realize that they love blueberry muffins and they all also can help each other. And you start to show, hey, we're all sitting around this table helping each other and we're all having a good time. This is what co-working is. Now just imagine that we do this in the morning and then we all get to work and then we can all go out to lunch, talk about how it's going, and like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Does that make sense? All right, cool. Follow up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I always get nervous when I like ramble for a while if I'm on it or if I'm not. So,
would I be able to say kind of the 5-phase plan we chose to get more members or educate?
Please do, Kyle. You're a font of wisdom. I love it.
So this is what we did to gain more members. We're in a small community of around 62,000. So similar situation. So the first thing we did was we contacted the local school board. We educated the school board members on what co-working is. We ended up getting the ability to come in and talk to a group of roughly 20 students, 20 different classes, where we told them what co-working is and what the value of it is. Then through that, we were able to get on the local news because we were a guest speaker in the local school district. So not only are the children coming home and giving their parents these packets and talking about this really cool, innovative, cool space, now the parents are seeing it on local news. Then once we, knew that kind of everybody knew about what we were, we hosted a fundraiser and we invited people who jived with, we played politics and invited people who jived with what we were doing. And then through that fundraiser, we met our goal of hosting the fundraiser, getting the school board educated, getting the town board educated. And yeah, that's it. So that was our 5-phase plan.
That's so badass, Kyle. And how did it go? I mean, what kind of response did you get? I feel like I already know the answer, but.
It was huge. Yeah, it was absolutely massive. That was our 5-week plan. So we wanted to do all of that within the first 5 weeks of opening to show that we can start strong and we can reach and accomplish a goal of, getting this fundraiser to where it needed to be. And yeah, we had a U.S. Senator come in as well, which was insane. And we had some really great people, in and helping us.
Cool. So what would you, if you were in Mark's position or someone else's position, kind of like on the other end of it, where would you start? Would you, like, how much of this is about the strategy and the programming versus the contacts that you make? Because you gotta have some decent relationships in order to be able to invite these people.
So it sounds, Mark, like there's some negativity going on in your small town, and there is here as well. We have a lot of negativity. Based around people don't like change and people don't like new things. So actually tonight what we're hosting an event called Something to Harp About. So we're bringing a harp player to play her harp, and then we're just going to complain about the things that suck in our city. And so the reason that we're doing that is because we want to get those concerns out and come up and figure out the root of why people are being negative, and we want to change that.
That's so freaking cool, Kyle. I love it. And it's a good lesson to kind of like listen to what's going on in your community and tap into the sentiment and then work with it. So in some cities are very vibrantly like Philadelphia is super pro Philadelphia. Like everybody in Philly is like, we're the best. We're like really going to support each other, blah, blah, blah. Like that's their shtick. But I think in a lot of places, yeah, people do like they like to complain. So let's give them a space to complain and maybe give them a way of seeing how they can also be a part of the solution. Right.
Because one of your complaints, Mark, was that people feel that you're a little bit overpriced because of the logo and the branding. I wouldn't devalue your brand in any way. You obviously have a very, very strong brand that people are noticing and thinking that it's high end. So I would definitely keep that brand, but maybe turning the narrative of that brand around and say, okay, we look like a high end brand, but we're affordable, right? We're affordable. So talk about the value of looking like a high end brand, but being able to help the small business, maybe something like that, or just twisting that narrative, but don't devalue the brand.
I just, Mark, I look at your poster that you had sent on the chat. You'd posted a file in there, which is beautiful. And I feel like that's going to be great as like a little postcard to put around town. The one question that I have is it looks like there isn't any level for a subscribed monthly membership. And I wonder if that's a deliberate choice or if there's something, we can get into that more in our next conversation. But I would say even if you put on the website something like, participate for as little as $20, somewhere on that website. So it shows, hey, this looks valuable, but it's also quite accessible, to Kyle's point, right? That maybe it could help diffuse it without you trying to make it feel less valuable. I would want it to be more like, wow, this thing feels like it should cost more, but
yes.
It's a good deal on it.
Turn that around,
yeah. Cool. Any other kind of wrap up thoughts on that topic or subject matter before we get into the next thing? Okay, so I'm going to segue into what Jen was saying. Just want to reflect it because I think it's so important. And I know that it's true for me as well. We tend to vastly underutilize our existing networks and our existing contacts, and making direct or somewhat direct feeling communication between those people is such a powerful and valuable way to continue to recruit people to help you at the various points that you need them to. And so, like as Jen said, she sent out this email to a bunch of people. She updated people on what was going on, and she updated them on what she needs. And that is going to change pretty regularly. So depending on what level of permission or comfort you have with your contact lists, you could kind of develop your own vibe for this. But if you send out an update letting people know what you've been up to and what you need help with next, first of all, not everybody reads every email you send. So a lot of times people just don't even know what's going on. People use social media less than you might think, and they even if they do, they might not see your posts. So there's a lot of people who don't even know that you run a co-working space. And maybe if they did, they'd be excited to support you in some way, but they simply don't know. And that's a kind of a weird reality of the digital world that we're in. But we can work with that by making sure that we are communicating as much as we can. And that is through your businesses list, right? So every one of you probably should have an email newsletter for the actual organization, but you've also got your personal contacts. And your personal contacts, you don't want to treat them like a marketing mailing list, like you're not going to pitch them all on paying for membership in your space, but you definitely can send kind of personal updates saying, hey, everybody, just wanted to let you know what's going on in my world, blah, blah, blah. This is what I've been up to. This is something exciting that happened. Here's a picture of me at an event with the mayor or whatever, right? And by the way, this is the kind of stuff that I'm up to next and things I could use help with. People tend to love that stuff. Does anybody do that? Anybody send any personal updates or personal messages? Penny, you do that?
Yeah, I've been sending out updates about every 3 weeks, and it's just things that we've been up to. So it's like what we've been up to and what's coming up next. Although I have not asked for help, and so I'm just making a note right now that I should ask for help. And I've been really careful to try to send that to all of my contacts, but then, inviting people to upcoming events, I'm just sending that to people who I know are therapists. So I really am trying to discern and trying not to send too much stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think I need to be asking how people can help, or, letting people know how they can help.
Yeah. And even if you're not directly asking them, but you're saying something like, here's what's on my mind next. I'm looking for new therapists to connect with. And you're not even necessarily asking them, hey, tell me about all the therapists, but you're just letting them know this is what I'm trying to do. And maybe that ends up being that somebody sends you something that they found, so a picture of something that they found when they were walking down the street somewhere, but you were not necessarily pushing them or expecting them to provide anything, but just making them aware of what's going on for you. Yeah. And the other thing that's important to recall here is that what we're doing is important, and it's making your cities better. It's creating economic opportunity. It's making your city literally more attractive for people to stay and for people to move there. So a lot of people have a shared interest in what you're doing, just as being citizens of the same region as you are. And so I think, and people like to feel helpful. People like to feel like they have some sense of civic value that they're chipping in to make their community better. And so if they can do that, even just by responding to your email to tell you about something they know about or a person they know about that you don't, we want to give people an opportunity to feel like they're able to help you to make this thing the beautiful, impactful thing that it is. And that's a continuous conversation that happens throughout. Even when you're open and you've been open for a while and you're just kind of chilling, you're trying to figure out what to do next, it's still another opportunity to engage people and find out what's out there.
So the other thing I have been trying to do is, as I think of people or meet people, add them to that mailing list, that email list. And so I'm trying to figure out who are the influencers in town and be sure that they're on my list. Of course, if they unsubscribe, but I want to be sure I'm hitting the people who just want to know about this, as far as like economic development, all those kind of people who are excited about new stuff happening. I am just adding them to my list.
I'm sure that even within our personal, forget the business, even with our personal realm, we could all end up with kind of our like newsletter of just friends who are contacts, people we've met at networking events, people who aren't really like that close, but we want to keep them in the loop, which could be, hundreds or, 1,000 people or whatever it is, like, kind of like what Jen was describing. And then there's kind of multiple levels of maybe more personal service. So for example, here in New York, I'm getting more active in local kind of community stuff just among friends. And I've got like a list of friends who I want to invite to dinner parties or whatever I have going on in town. And that's a big enough list that I want to maybe mail merge them. And so I use Yet Another Mail Merge, which is a plugin for Google Spreadsheets, which I love dearly. And it's got a premium upgrade that's very cheap and lets me email up to 400 people at a time. But it's an individual personalized email to each person. And that's gotten tremendous response when I've wanted to email a bunch of friends all at once. And then that next level is really kind of VIP level contacts. And honestly, what we should all be doing, and maybe we'll work this into kind of the program that I'm thinking of for all of us to work on, is to set like a recurring calendar entry where we say, go through the VIP list and email those people. Because inevitably, somebody who is just awesome, powerful, influential, whatever it is, somebody who could be very, very valuable to you, but maybe for one reason or another, the relationship's just not ready to bloom yet. That if we forget about them, we lose that contact, and then we don't get to capture that opportunity. But even if we just check in once a quarter, just to say, hey, I just wanted to see how things are going with you, wanted to let you know, this is what's going on for me. Let me know if you want to get a coffee, right? There are probably, for every one of us, there are probably 5 or 10 people on that list that we should be trying to keep up with once a quarter or so. Does anybody have any like kind of construct for that or anything that they do in that regard as far as VIPs? That's a no. Kyle, I feel like you were going to be on top of that. I was waiting for Kyle's like process for the dealing with the VIPs. All right. So,
quick thing, what we do with our VIPs is we bring them in and, we shoot Polaroid photos of them. And, that's really what we do is we just keep them engaged, and something like a Polaroid feels a lot less threatening than a big camera. I mean, everything we do is so content based, even within our meetings and our relationships and everything. And we try to just make sure that content is as authentic and genuine and heartfelt as possible, and not just some like advertisement or some email list or something like that. We really try to like put our heart into every piece of content that we're putting out.
Gotcha. Good call. Any other thoughts on anything we've talked about up to this point? What do you think of this VIP thing? Like, does that make sense? Does that sound like a valuable direction to go, is to like spend some more time with that? I'm seeing some nods, some quiet nods. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to think about how to kind of frame that as far as where we go from here. So what I want to talk about next is what Jadia brought up and how that can link to something we might all be able to do as a group. And Serena, this kind of touches on some of the stuff we've been nibbling around as well. So Jadia was talking about, and actually Jadia, why don't you just kind of reintroduce what you had mentioned in the Slack chat to help us get a context for it?
Yeah, so we've been around for about 11 years now, and something that we're really known for is our events. I know, it's crazy. I haven't been there for 11 years, but so we're really known in the community for our events, even co-working spaces that are popping up around the city. We meet as an alliance, and that's like the number one thing that they ask me about is how to build really consistent high-performing events. Well, I am starting to get really, really bored of the events that we've been doing, and I think that our attendance is starting to show others are too. And so I want to kind of shake it up a bit, but not completely disrupt what is good in being like broad and open to a lot of small business owners. But I think I want to add in some like niche stuff, or bringing in a younger crowd or the creative crowd or whatever it might be, without really alienating our core base, if that makes sense. So need some help with that. And you mentioned on Slack seasonal systems in terms of events, which I've never thought of before. So I'm really curious to hear about that.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think this topic is super valuable because there's a lot that we can do with this that can help solve a lot of the other questions and problems that come up in this conversation. So Jody is part of this community. It's been running for a while. It's going well. She's got programming. It's going well. But there's also kind of this melange of other ideas and interests, and maybe some of the things that are running, they're winding down, or the interest in them is waning, or even the interest in just running them is waning, right? That is starting to feel stagnant. And anybody who's been running a community with the same slate of programs for long enough knows, and I wonder if this is something you're noticing, Jody, is like sending out the newsletter, where the newsletter has the exact same list of events as what it was a few months ago or a few weeks ago. It just feels kind of like, wow, I literally could just send the exact same email again and just like change the numbers of the dates. And that just feels so like, ugh, right? So what I am proposing, and what I've looked at in the past, what I think is so valuable and so important that anybody with the ability to do it should do it. Some folks on this call are maybe like their setup is too small for this, and we could talk about how to work with that. But for Jaudia, where you've got this established thing, you've got event space, anybody who's at that level, it's definitely applicable, is that we think of it in terms of seasonal campaigns. You think of it kind of like the way a university works. It has semesters. Even businesses have quarters, but doing it specifically kind of college style, where we say, okay, this is the summer program. This is going to be the Launch House summer program. It starts June. It goes June through August, or it goes July through September. It's a 2 or 3 month slate. And during that time, you're going to have a distribution of programming that covers the various things that you need to cover. And if you're just a basic space, you just do the core stuff. So if you don't have like a big event space, what you do is the core stuff, which is like, this is our monthly Blueberry meetup. That's for everybody to come in and eat blueberry muffins and get to know each other. We always got to do one of those total freebie things. This is our work sprint that we do every week that gives people a way to kind of co-work and get to know each other, right? Maybe like whatever the other Codivation or show and tell or whatever those kind of basic, it happens every month. It happens every week. We just always do it because we can always count on it. That's the core program. And for June through August or whatever it is, let's say it's June, July, August. It's a little tight for June. So let's say it's July, August, September, right? That we're planning this. During those times, these are the dates for all the Blueberry meetups. These are the dates for all the Codivations. These are the dates for all the work sprints, whatever. That's in your calendar. And that means right now you've got those 3 months worth on the calendar. Everybody's coordinated. If like you run a thing typically, Jade, like you run the Blueberry Muffin meetup on the first Monday of the month, but August 1st, you're going to be out of town on the first Monday of the month. You can find somebody to cover you now, or you can change the date now, like way in advance before it becomes a headache, right? Then you can program your social media posts to promote all those things, et cetera, et cetera. But then the other thing is, for any programming you do beyond the core, that programming can be figured out in advance, and it can have time allocated for it. So if you want to do something, you can decide, well, in this summer period of July through September, is this a one-time event? Is it a monthly event? Is it a weekly event? Is it mornings or afternoons? Whatever it is, but you allocate that for what it is. And if you have like a really robust event space where you're doing a lot of event programming, what we would do is we actually said, okay, we've got Monday to Thursday of our event space, 7 to 9 p.m. That's our prime time. So it's 4 nights a week. And we would have, 1 or 2 of those nights would be a weekly event that would be happening every week. So those are out. And then the rest of them would be monthly events that would be kind of rotating through. But you look at the inventory from that perspective. And then we think about how are we going to allocate this inventory over the course of, this 3-month period. And then what that gives you the ability to do is it gives you an ability to put a call to action to your community, as Kyle had suggested in the chat, to say, okay, our new slate gets announced July 1st, or our new slate of programming is going to go July 1st to September. We're going to announce it just before July 1st. So if you want something to be on our programming calendar for the summer, get it to us by June 10th or whatever it is. And then what that does is it gives everybody a really clear sense of, if I want to do something at Launch House, I have to fill out this form and I have to do it by June 10th. And then by June 10th, you now have a big old list of stuff to look at. And you can decide based on whatever criteria you determine. This one's in, this one, whatever, right? And then you can communicate with everybody what they need to know. If you need to show everybody how to run an event in your space, you can do that with everyone as a group. And then you could create all your marketing materials. You can even print, postcards with your calendar of what's coming up, like a music venue, right? Like a music venue has their whole thing for the rest of the year, printed on a card so they can hand it out to the local cafes. And then everybody knows this is what's going on. Now, obviously stuff's going to come up, things are going to change, whatever, but it gives you that really strong sense of like, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. And like, we want to try this idea. Great. We try it for these 3 months and we commit to trying it and we promote it and we make sure that lots of people know about it. Jen, this is going to speak to that issue. Jessica, this is going to speak to that issue you had mentioned around 2 people showing up, right? So we get to really kind of boost everything. And then during that time, you see what works and what doesn't. If somebody wants to do a program in your space, one of the problems with a member running a program in your space is because they're not paid staff, there's nothing keeping them doing it. So it's very easy for them to fall off. And it's hard for you to promote a thing that you're not running, right? But if you say, look, I'm going to give you my space to run your thing in, but you have to promise to do it for the time you've committed to for these 3 months only. And then once we hit August, when we're getting to the end of this cycle, then you can look at everything that happened and say, okay, what went well? What do we want to do again? What do we want to change up? And what do we gracefully want to let die? And that's the other beautiful part, is that if something is just not working or you want to make room for something else, you can say, hey, that term's over. We got to make room for new stuff. And here's the fresh thing. So it's really streamlined stuff. And then the other thing I want to mention really fast is that then it gives you a really, really great way to recruit new members. So if you say, okay, July 1st, the new calendar hits, that first day of that month, or even right before that, that's when you have your new member interest meeting or your big kind of party or whatever. And if you're really running the full version of this where you have a lot of programming, you have the people who are leading those programs at that event. And then it becomes kind of like the first weekend in college when all the different university clubs have their little booths set up in the student union. You could go sign up for dance and you could sign up for basketball and whatever the clubs are. Obviously, we're not quite the level of universities, but you can have that vibe of, if you want to join, this is when our accountability group is starting. This is when our programming school is starting. This is when our hiking club is starting, whatever that is. So come join by July 1st. You're going to be able to be a part of the next cohort, right? And I mean, you could even take that further and make color-coded t-shirts and stuff like that. But you'll find that, and you've been doing this for a long time, Jaudia, or the space has, people naturally gravitate to this in the space. You'll see groups of people who are clustered with each other or who know each other because they joined around the same time, or they've been in the space for around the similar lengths of time. And you can even see you see there's a group of people having lunch who are the summer of 2015 group that met and bonded that season, And so creating that sense of cohesion also can increase your retention. How am I doing? What are you guys thinking? What reflections are you getting from what I'm saying? Somebody please say something.
I like this, the idea of having the deadline, because I just think if you have those parameters around it, sometimes constraints and parameters inspire creativity. So I like that idea a lot.
Nice. Serena, I'm curious how this aligns with what's been going on in your world, and I should also mention this covers the issue of how do we communicate that we're more than an office rental space, and in a really obvious way. What thoughts do you have, Serena?
I think it's interesting. I think we we do a good number of events, and a lot of them are run by members. So like we have a food meetup run by a guy that has a snack company, like that sort of thing. So I think it'd be an interesting sort of challenge and opportunity to think of how like our stuff aligns with their stuff, because we sort of, that's like a huge benefit we provide is we let people run their own events and meetups. And so we've never done it such that like we've always been the ones leading all of the programming, nor do I think we should shift to doing that. But I do think the like biggest benefit I see in there is just like getting a bunch of people together at the same time. And so I think hopefully that's something that we'll be able to play around with in some form.
Are you advertising for his events as well?
Yeah, not aggressively, but like the ones that people do through us, we put on social media and we put in our newsletter, that sort of thing.
Okay, so if he brings you a list of 5 events, you will then take and distribute his advertising materials through all your channels?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for someone like in your situation, Serena, it's really more a matter of, well, first of all, are there things that could be done better as far as onboarding and managing and promoting and allocating space for the various programming you're already doing? And so it might largely just be a matter of taking what I'm saying and, as a way of framing what you're already doing and streamlining how you manage it so that it's easier and smoother, that it's less work, right?
Yeah.
If you reasonably know what your whole summer slate of programming is going to be by June 15th, because 90% of it is going to have to be ready by then, that means you can schedule all your social media posts for event-related promotion, by July 1st, and then I was going to say like kick back and just watch it all fly. But obviously it means it just takes a lot of little tasks off your plate that can run on autopilot while you're running around dealing with other stuff.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So what I'm wondering is whether we can take something like this. And I realize that we're a very diverse group. We have people here who have been open 11 years. We have people who don't have a space. We have people who have big spaces, multiple locations. We have people with very small spaces. But we all do have a common thread that brings us here. And it's not just workspace. It's that we want to create organizations that are creating meaningful connection between people in this world of kind of a new way of working and living. And I think that we can claim that identity in a more resolute way than what we are seeing just with the workspace rental side. And I think the fact that there's a whole bunch of us in this room gives us a way to be able to say, hey, we're all on the same team, and we're on this team of doing something that is resolutely more than renting workspace. And I think one of the tricks to that is communicating what that more than a workspace is. But if I want to take my own advice from the beginning of this call, maybe what we do is we do that by showing what's going on in our spaces and talking about that and making that more of a visible thing. So even if we just, as a group, talked about what we collectively are all going to be doing this summer, with the programs we're going to be home to, and all the opportunities that we're going to be providing, I feel like that would be able to give us a better way of also collectively communicating our respective cities what it is that we're about and what we do. And so I'd love for us to be able to coordinate that in a more directed way. One of the things I'm thinking about doing is, first of all, just doing that, having some way of saying, hey, our spaces are committed to this direction of providing programming that's going to help our region. We want to get the language around that better, and putting that out there. So that's kind of like a one-time thing that, our spaces are on board for this. And then potentially doing some more structured programming into developing that seasonal program and developing some of the stuff that we've been talking about over the months. Basically taking stuff that we bring up ad hoc in these calls and making a little bit more of a structured endeavor with it. And using that as a way to touch on a lot of the core things that all of us need to do that maybe we don't do just because we don't make the time for it or whatever. I feel like one of the challenges in these calls is that I might fire off a really decent idea, but then, we talk about it, but there's no follow-up. It's entirely up to you guys whether you follow up on any of the things we do on these calls or not. And it's very, very easy for us to talk about something cool and then never do it. So if we were to provide a little bit more of a structure around that, I think it could be a way of driving home the value of some of the things we've talked about in kind of a more programmatic way. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think it starts with us coming to some kind of an agreement on what a bunch of us would be willing to kind of plant a flag and declare that we're a part of, and getting the language around that right. And recognizing that not all of us is going to be on board exactly with everything, but even if we got a bunch of the people who are in this group to kind of march to the same beat, I think that would be beneficial to the whole group. So that's kind of the thinking that I'm having on it right now. What do you guys think of that?
I guess my question for you, Tony, would be like, I think the biggest challenge is kind of that, going back to whoever said that the word co-working isn't always familiar. And so I think there's like, I guess, a big opportunity to get language that kind of helps explain that. But also, as you mentioned, like some cities have a much more familiarity. So what are your thoughts on kind of balancing that language so that everybody kind of gets what it means?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways of approaching it. It's a big opportunity. It's also a big challenge, because creating a word that everybody gets, like co-working, it might take a decade. So it's super hard to do, especially if it's a private group like what we're doing. I would say that there's a couple of different ways of playing with it, and this is absolutely something I need everyone's perspective on to help figure out. But I'm noticing that there's a big thread around isolation, distraction, loneliness, all the kind of issues around people feeling like they're having trouble finding a sense of belonging, finding your people, finding your community. And so I've played with an idea of using language around either like a center of belonging, or a gathering place. The idea of being a center, a location where you can go and you can find your people. And that's happening through the various programming you offer. And again, even if you're a teeny tiny little space and you only offer the very minimal core stuff, just the Blueberry Muffin meetup and Codivation and work sprints, you can claim this for your small city, right? So I'm picturing some of the folks in this thread who fit that description. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to go after a specific offering or programming that explains itself. The same way I kind of used the Blueberry Muffin thing in the beginning as a simple example. If we said we're going to try to solve a specific problem, or we're going to offer a specific program, and again, not all of us are going to do it, but if we got 20 of us to do it, it would still be pretty amazing. If we said we're going to do a specific thing on a specific day, or maybe even not that specific, but it's going to be one program that we're all pushing, I think that language would help to speak for itself and kind of create the greater awareness of what we're doing. And that could be tied to a goal. So for example, if we said we're going to help, between all of us, we're going to help 1,000 women from underserved communities start businesses for the first time. And we're going to do that through a Codivation program that we're all going to run. And it's going to be, we're going to look for sponsors to underwrite it. Could we collectively do that? Absolutely. Right. And that's an amazing story. It would be something we could all put into our PR, and, it would garner some attention and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm looking at it from a few different angles, and I would love to get your reflections on what you vibe or what sounds better to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of potential. It's super exciting.
Do you guys think that we?
Tony, you had said something about accountability within our group, and it was kind of just crickets after. And I was wondering, something along the lines of, and I said it in the chat, all of us come together holding accountability. We plan one one event that's outside of our comfort zone, and then follow up and see how it works. Something like that. I'm just trying to figure out how to make our group accountable, or more, following through with things. But we can talk more about that some other time.
Okay. Do you think that we need something very specific that we try to work on together, like a particular program or goal? Or do you think that we can be a little bit more open-ended about how each of us approaches it?
I don't know. I guess, what does everybody else think? We're all super busy, so obviously it can't be something like crazy, but maybe start very small with something that is going to challenge, you as a member. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be an event or, something like that, but something that's outside of the comfort zone that can challenge us and push us a little bit more.
I like keeping it open-ended like that, Kyle. I think that's an amazing idea of like one thing timeline we have to report back, because as you guys have been talking, I've been like jotting down some new event ideas as this like the juices are flowing, and I feel like if I had like a timeline and I knew I had to be accountable, I would totally like get it together and throw it on the calendar. And that's like palatable. It's like a bite-size progression.
Yeah, so it could even be something that is specific but also open-ended, like come up with your summer game plan for this group, for us to all go over together and kind of learn from each other by June 1st or whatever it is, or maybe even by next week. And then we say, everybody who wants to, who would find value in that accountability loop would be able to, use that to help them say, okay, I got to figure out how I'm going to handle my programming, my membership recruitment, my strategy for the summer. And I have to at least be able to post a little bit about what it is in our group. And then we can all learn from what everybody else creates. Something like that?
Yeah, no, I really like that. I like the idea of thinking about it in the summer chunk. And because it'll be, since Day House, we've only been open 2 months, this will be our first summer. And I actually, as I was working on putting together our events and programming and trying to figure out the best way, was thinking I was going to announce them all at once for our summer, and hopefully get on people's calendars and just kind of can sell them as a whole or all together. Like, this is the programming. So even if someone can't come to one date, they're not just focused on one event. They'll see everything together, and they can attend what works for them. But no, I like that.
Yeah, let's saves you a lot of time and energy if you can streamline, for sure. Okay, cool. I might send out a bit of a mini survey to the group. Obviously, we've only got a small portion of the whole group here, just to get a sense of where everyone's head's at, and maybe, what preferences you have as far as one idea or another. We can go from there. I brought this up originally because of what Jody brought up. Jody, any final thoughts as far as how this could line up for you?
Yeah, sorry, I just had to help a member. I'm like out of breath running up and down the stairs.
What do you think of what we just talked about?
It's like I was like, okay, just put it down. I'll look at it later. So yeah, I think that this helps because like shaping it in terms of like a summer series, or just like, I mean, we have things planned out that we could totally put into like a package and just like add a few things in. So, I mean, for me, I think the accountability of it is very, very helpful and a way to kind of look forward to how we can utilize the group. So I'm all for that. I think that that's a really good idea. I just think it has to be like palatable and bite-sized because we're all so busy.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, got to respect the fact that everybody's busy. That's like one of the requirements for this group, for sure. If anybody wants to talk more about it offline, I would love to hear your thoughts. Email me or even message me in Slack. Ooh, fancy. And thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your thoughts on this. I hope this has been super valuable to all of you. Keeping awesome. I will see you in 1 week. Sound good? You guys ready to go kick ass? Go change lots of lives this week. Have so much fun. Enjoy your communities. I'll see you next week.